Hello! So I hope you've brought your appetite and ears, because it's time for another ghostly tale of mystery, mischief, and eerie wonder. Well now, believe it or not, this little story came straight from my home, here at the Gathering Stone. Now I don't know how this happened really, given all the magic confoundments surrounding this place, but it did. And it all began with a simple festive culinary treat: pumpkin pie. Now Flambe, if you'll remember, is our own lost chef. His monster-inspired gourmet delights were most often unappealing, or at best frowned upon in the open market. But here he has been able to flourish. With our constant stream of would-be adventurers and outcasts, he's always had someone new to try his experimental delicacies. Thanks in no small part to a, let's just say, magical traveling merchant who happens to usually be fully stocked with all sorts of bestial commodities, fresh produce, herbs, and the like, of which Flambe can take his pick in preparation for a few days' worth of recipes he might prepare for us. And on this particular day, the merchant was carrying an assortment of seasonal, brightly marmalade-tinted gourds, or pumpkins. Having already disgusted a few of our travelers with a dish of gritty larva hash, he thought he might make amends through baking a sweet autumnal pie. All he needed was a few spices: nutmeg, cinnamon, and of course, pumpkins. Looking them over, they all seemed to be in very robust condition, especially one in particular towards the back of the pile. It almost glowed with vigor, begging to be plucked, shucked, and baked. Heaving it up with a grunt, Flambe examined the squash for any bruises. Strangely, it almost hummed with vibrance. What a remarkable hunk of produce, he thought. This'll do. He nodded, then relieved the merchant of his wares, paid him in full, and waved farewell with a smile, as he whistled with gusto while returning to the makeshift culinary camp he established just next to the Gathering Stone on a flat little patch of dirt. Unbeknownst to him, and perhaps also to the merchant, this particularly rotund melon just so happened to also be a supernatural prison of sorts. So it was that when Flambe sliced into the squash, and daylight broke to the inner walls, that a ghostly wind whistled through the surrounding hills. Sending a chill down his spine. Thinking it nothing more than a meteorological event, he tightened his apron and set to work, dismantling the rest of the pumpkin, then stoked the embers before he set to making the filling from the mashed innards, unaware that someone, or something, had just been freed, and was now watching his every move. Towards the late evening, as the dark sky made way for twinkling stars, a rolling fog began to accumulate around the hills, just as Flambe finished the most delectable-looking pumpkin pie, and rested it on a nearby stump to cool before sharing and showing with everyone at the Gathering Stone. Unfortunately for him, that would never come to be, for upon his return the pie had vanished. Nothing but a small dollop of cream was left. Upset and bewildered, Flambe stomped over to where everyone was gathered, and crossed his arms while surveying each one in scrutiny. Curious, I spoke up. "Well, chef, the aroma has been enticing for hours. May we try this pumpkin pie yet?" Flambe huffed, and turned to look down at me.
Would love to. Except some snaky, gluttonous thief is taking it upon themselves to nick off with it. So we got no pie, and I'm right fuming.
Everyone looked a bit forlorn as they all traded looks and shrugs, unsure of who done it. Though most looked to Charlie and Garlic, as they were the usual culprits when any sort of prank was afoot.
Whoa. We had nothing to do with this. We're just as angry as the rest of you, I swear.
Yeah,
Garlic chimed in. It is getting late, my friends. Perhaps I suggest we sleep on it before anything is said or done to make matters worse. And in the morning, maybe we can solve this puzzling pastry problem. So, with a smattering of agreement and empty bellies, everyone made their way to bed. Not that anyone would be sleeping tonight, for as they were each nestling into a comfortable position to rest, a mischievous plan was already underway. The thrashing cudgel of eternity, Garlic's prized possession, was silently floating towards the center of camp, which, if you'll remember, plays a thunderous musical riff every time it comes in contact with an object by force. The cudgel was raised near 6 meters, and as the beautifully silent night reached a relaxing peak, it was dropped. Roused by the sudden crescendo in all manner of various grumpiness, our sleepy residents once again gathered round in a hurried, if not frustrated, but now confused assembly. For the cudgel was hopping around the campfire of its own accord, blaring music with each bounce. The chickens were floating merrily about a meter above the ground as if nothing was wrong. My glasses were knocking up and down on my head, and each guest seemed to be wrestling with their clothes as if the fabric had a mind of its own. It was chaos, of low magnitude for certain, but chaos nonetheless. Confounded as I was, it wound up being Satash who had had enough and took charge. Raising his staff, he muttered an incantation, then spoke.
cease and reveal.
All shenanigans stopped at once, followed by a cackling giggle that came from above. Looking up, there was the pumpkin pie, with what appeared to be a jovial, if not wicked face imposed upon it. And next to the pastry, a ghostly young boy looking sheepish. With mouth agape, all stared as the two floated down to eye level. How odd. The spectre-like boy glanced around before looking at the ground and mumbled. "Sorry, but also, thanks. I've been stuck in that stupid squash for a long time." I see now. What shall we call you, young lad?" I asked. "Robbie," he replied. "And, your friend?" That's also me. Pretty sure, at least." Well, come to find out, Robbie, in his past life, was quite the prankster. Known mostly for pilfering pumpkins from local farmers, and subsequently carving or smashing them for fun. Regrettably, Robbie targeted the wrong group of gypsy farmers one night, and was cursed to live out an eternity within a pumpkin as his prison. I must remember to inquire with our local merchant the next time he travels through as to whereabouts he came upon such an item. Anyways, when Flambe cracked open the preternatural relic, Robbie was set free, but his more mischievous nature was then cooked into the very pie before us, creating a sort of poltergeist personality. The magics of this place never ceases to amaze me. Well, I think it only reasonable that Robbie's penance must now be paid by keeping his delinquent delicacy under control. Good thing he wound up here at the Gathering Stone, where help will always be just over the hill. That's it for this week, folks. Hopefully you've given Robbie a warm welcome, and be sure to come back next week for the final spooky tale to round out our holiday specials. Farewell for now.